חסידות סלונים. יש כזה חסידות, סלונים. Now, he's not a Lubavitcher, and he's still living in Tveria, because he do for Yiddishkeit some good things. He has a koilel, he has a yeshiva, and other things. And he tell me the story. He's not a Lubavitcher. So he says, אני לא חב"דניק. למה אני עושה שליחות? אבל my father was here, and I have to have a tradition for my father. I have to keep my father's word. So I stay in Tveria. So he tell me, this is the reka.
The background.
Now, what is the story? He tell me he has a dream. חלום, היה לו חלום. And he going together with the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, in the street in Tveria.
In Tveria.
In Tveria. And the Rebbe asked him, what are you doing in Tveria? So we go like to tour, הוא עושה טיול עם הרבי ביחד ברחוב בטבריה, ברחוב, it's a street on the name of my grandfather, רחוב הרב ורנר, street Rabbi Werner street. So they go together, he and the Rebbe going together, and the Rebbe asked him, what are you doing in Tveria? So he answered to the Rebbe, חזק ונתחזק. This week we're going to say חזק ונתחזק, yes? So he answers to the Rebbe, חזק ונתחזק. What is the meaning? Just übersetzen. אני מחזק אנשים אחרים, והשם מחזק אותי. חזק ונתחזק.
So we say it at the end of the parasha this week, we should be strengthened. So he told the Rebbe in his dream that I strengthen other people, and God strengthens me.
חזק ונתחזק. And the Rebbe very smile from the world. The Rebbe go in together with him to the hotel and he wake up. This is the story. חזק ונתחזק.
Strengthen other people and God strengthens you.
Yeah, so I נזכרתי בסיפור קטן. This reminds me another story. Somebody going to the Rebbe. There was a very serious guy in America. I don't remember the name, but he has a lot of power and איך אומרים השפעה.
He's very
influence.
About a lot of Jewish people in America. So the Rebbe tell him, if you ask the people put filling, so people gonna put filling because you have a power and if you say something, it's gonna happen. So he says, the Rebbe, I have only one problem. I'm not putting filling. So the Rebbe says, what is the problem? Put filling also. So if it says, I'm ashamed to say to people put filling because I'm not putting filling. So the Rebbe says, what is the problem? Start to put filling. So this is the Rebbe's way. חזק ונתחזק. You're gonna do for other people, it's gonna bring yourself to be in the right place.
wow. Awesome. חזק ונתחזק. That's fantastic. חזק.
Back to regular schedule program.
Now back to regular schedule program. Thank you. So there's a question a lot of people ask in different ways, in different settings. Very often that if anyone has been to a what's it called? A party for people in industry party. In the industry party, people walk around and they have the LA virus. LA virus is what's in it for me? They look at you. Are you a producer? You're not a producer. They go to someone else. So in a similar way, there's a lot of times people ask the question, what's in it for me? What do I gain? What do I get? And a lot of people, when considering making a step forward in their Judaism, adding another mitzvah that they haven't done before, they ask themselves, well, why am I doing this mitzvah? Am I doing this mitzvah really altruistically? Am I doing this for the right reasons? Or am I doing this because I'm hoping that if I do this mitzvah, then God will bless me in some way. So a lot of people hesitate before adding another mitzvah to their lives because they say, even if I do this mitzvah, it's not really going to be sincere. It's not going to be altruistic. Altruistic means that just like you like good things for yourself, so the Torah tells us, love your fellow like yourself, and to practice altruism and to do things genuinely, really, for the sake of the person that you're trying to help. Like Rabbi Deitch was saying that we strengthen others, God strengthens us. So the altruistic version of that would be, it doesn't matter what happens to me. I just want to do it because I want to help others, because I want to serve Hashem, and not because of what's going to happen to me. But often we ask that question. The question is it possible Is it really possible to be totally altruistic, do things totally for the sake of Hashem, for the sake of other people? Or is there always going to be some kind of selfish motive tracing itself back to us, and that's why I'm doing whatever I'm doing? So this week, the Torah begins with these words. If you will keep my mitzvahs, Hashem says, what's going to happen? I'm going to give you the rain in its season. And it doesn't only mean rain. The word rain, gishmechem, means gashmiut, all physical things. You keep the mitzvahs, Hashem says, and all good things will happen to you. You'll have all good things happen in your life. The more mitzvahs you do, the more Torah you learn, the better your life will be. So it sounds like that the way Moshe Rabbeinu and is presenting it to us, Hashem is presenting it to us, is do this because it will make it rain. When really you would think that we should do this because it's the right thing to do, not because it's going to rain. Let's say it doesn't rain. Let's say it wouldn't affect the rain. It would just because Hashem said so. Isn't that good enough? And it sounds like the way Hashem is presenting it, that you should do this because it's going to make your life better. But what about doing it for the right reasons? Doing it for the sake of Hashem? Doing it because out of love for Hashem? Doing it because it's truth? Why is Hashem presented as, do this, you'll get that? Is that the best way of looking at it? It seems like in the Torah, it doesn't mention anything about, it's clear in this parsha, it's associating, do this and you'll get that. There's a famous story of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov often tried to travel to Israel. He's never successful. People say the reason he wanted to go to Israel is because he wanted to meet the Orach Chaim. They say if the Baal Shem Tov would have met the Orach Chaim, Mashiach would have come. So several times he traveled there and he didn't make it. But one time he ended up going to Istanbul in Turkey, and it was before Pesach rather, and he had ran out of provisions. He and his daughter Adul, they were together staying somewhere in Istanbul without anything, and it's the night of the Seder. And Baal Shem Tov went to join the prayers, and they have no idea how they're going to have the Seder because they don't have anything. So all of a sudden, right before candle lighting, these two travelers passed by, and they said, "Can we stay with you? We brought provisions with us. We're traveling. We brought provisions with us, and we have enough for everybody. We just need a place to stay." And so she invites them to come stay. The Baal Shem Tov comes back from davening, and they have a whole Seder set up. And Baal Shem Tov is so excited and so happy and so appreciative. He asked these two travelers, is there any specific blessing that any of you guys need? So one guy says, yeah, my wife and I were married for 10 years. We don't have any children, and I need a blessing for children. So Baal Shem Tov gives him a heartfelt, not just blessing, a promise. I promise you the next year you're going to have a child. This caused a big uproar in heaven because the rule is, it says in the Torah, if a tzaddik makes a decree, God fulfills it. Whenever a tzaddik says this is the way it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But this guy wasn't officially in store, according to the heavenly plan. He wasn't in store he and his wife were not going to have a child the next year. And yet, Baal Shem Tov made that promise, so they had to fulfill it. The rules are, the tzaddik decrees, it happens. But as a punishment to the Baal Shem Tov for saying this, it was decided in heaven that the Baal Shem Tov would lose his share in the world to come. So the Baal Shem Tov was informed of this decision in heaven. You're going to lose your share in the world to come because of what you said. How do you think the Baal Shem Tov felt when he heard that? He was excited. He was happy. Wow! Now I could really serve Hashem without any thought of anything for myself. I could serve Hashem totally and completely altruistically just because of Hashem, not because I'm going to gain anything, because I'm not going to gain anything. So the way I heard the story was that in that marriage you got it back. Whatever, that's not really the point. The point is that it doesn't mention, though, in the Torah, the world to come. The Torah just says you'll get rain. Why doesn't the Torah talk about the world to come? Why do we know that after a person passes away, chas v'shalom, they're rewarded in the next world? How come the Torah doesn't say, keep the mitzvot, and then you'll get to go to Gan Eden? Doesn't hint to Gan Eden in the whole entire portion. Why doesn't it mention Gan Eden? So 2 answers, actually 7 answers that the Barbanel says, but I know that you guys have to go back to work, so I'll only tell you 2 of them. One answer is, why isn't Torah mentioning Gan Eden? The Torah doesn't really mention any reward. The Torah isn't talking about reward in this parsha. It says rain and it says blessing. The rain and blessing is just a means to an end. Hashem is telling you, if you try to keep the mitzvot, Hashem says, I'll make it possible. You try to keep the Torah, you try to learn Torah, the Rambam says, Hashem promises us that if we try to keep Torah, Hashem will make it possible. So it's not about reward. That's one answer. Other answer is, the Torah doesn't talk about Gan Eden, doesn't talk about the world to come, because the Torah is advertising to most people. Most people are more concerned about what's happening today, tonight, tomorrow, next week, or next month, maybe next year. They're not really concerned about what's happening in the afterlife. And since it's concerned about the afterlife, the Torah doesn't talk about it. The Torah wants to advertise itself to most people. Most people care about the here and now. They don't care about Gan Eden. They don't care about spiritual reward either. So therefore, the Torah talks more about what's for lunch than what's for dinner. The Torah talks about what's happening right now as a result of keeping Torah, as opposed to talking about what's going to happen later. So that's one explanation that Barbanel says. But I want to share with you a deeper explanation. Before I do, I want to just explain in general the idea of reward and punishment and how it works. There are two explanations among Jewish philosophers about how reward and punishment works, period. I think we discussed it a few months ago. One way of looking at reward and punishment is like this. One way is that you keep Torah, you keep mitzvahs, and Hashem gives you a miraculous reward. It's kind of like you tell your child, look 2 ways before you cross the street and I'll give you a lollipop. So the child is rewarded twice for looking both ways before he crosses the street. One way is a natural reward because he looks both ways, he's safe. And the second reward is you're giving him a candy. So the question is, how does God reward us? Is it natural? Like, for example, you eat right and you feel healthy. So it's so too you keep Torah. Let's say in business, you're honest in your business. People hear about your business. People hear how honest you are. So it's natural that you keeping Torah is going to make your life better. And as similarly, there's a deeper way of looking at it, and that is that it's not that Torah is just the best way of life and therefore will make you beloved in the eyes of man and the eyes of God, but Hashem built into the world the world itself comes from Hashem, and the world itself has godly energy in it. So when you do a mitzvah, you unleash into the world a revelation of God's infinite light, and automatically your life is better, because since God made the world, so when you do a mitzvah, you learn Torah, you're bringing into your life something godly and holy, and automatically that's a source of everything. Hashem is a source of all physical things. So when you do a mitzvah, you learn Torah, you're bringing in blessing to your life because the world was created from Torah. Torah is a blueprint of creation. So it's kind of like this. Some people think when they take a day off from work on Shabbat, they're sacrificing their business for the sake of Shabbat. The real way of looking at it is that when you keep Shabbat, you're enhancing your business. You're working in the business for 6 days of the week. On the 7th day, you're working on the business. Why? Because by keeping what the Torah says, that itself changes. I'll give you an example. I think there was this guy who was arrested for gambling. Why was he arrested? He was in Las Vegas. It's kosher there. Why was he arrested? He was arrested because he was winning every single slot machine. How did he win every slot machine? He invented the slot machine. He made this particular slot machine, and he made the slot machine with the trapdoor method. If you press this button, you pull this thing, put this amount of coins in it, made a whole system, and then you'll win. So he went out. He didn't want to win himself because then they'll catch him. The FBI will catch him much faster. He went into the parking lot. He paid someone $200. Says, "You go in, you finish up the code, and you win the slot machine." And he did this, and he won. In a similar way, he was arrested because it's against the rules. But Hashem made in the world a trapdoor method. Hashem's made in the world that mitzvahs and Torah, they bring blessing to you because Hashem, the whole point of creation is the mitzvahs and the Torah. Therefore, automatically, it changes things. It's not a miraculous thing. It's natural. Hashem made the world in a way that a mitzvah brings God's light and life into your world. So that's what the Zohar means when the Zohar says, Torah is your life. What that means is, we all wear many hats, right? Everyone wears many hats. You're a taxi driver, you're a custodian, you're a businessman, you're a father, you're a husband, you're a son, you do all kinds of things. But then and we're all kinds of personalities. There are extroverts, introverts, there are all kinds of people, all kinds of appearances. But what is life itself? What is life? We all have 3 different machines inside us in general. We have our mind, a fascinating machine. We have our heart that pumps life into us all the time. We have our feet that make us mobile, go from one place to another. There are 3 different departments, and it seems that they're not necessarily related to each other. But which part of you is alive? Is your mind alive? Is your heart alive? Or your feet alive? Which one of you is alive?
Your soul.
So where's your soul? In your mind, in your heart, or in your feet?
Your mind. All over your blood.
At your life, nefesh basar b'damo. Very good. It says your soul is in your blood. So that means that every single part of you is alive. There's no part of you which is more alive or less alive. You could see more life perhaps in your mind and your heart, but there's no part of you which is more or less alive. So how do you know that something has touched your very core? Something has become part of you. What it tell is if it touches your feet too. If you're happy, let's say, you're happy and you smile. Okay, it's a good joke, you smile. Then not just you heard a good joke, you're great news. Great news, your business and transaction, your investment was exponentially 10x more than you thought it was going to be. Whoa! Now you're singing a little bit. And then not just you're singing, you're walking around zippity-doo-dah, you're coming home, psst, it's freilich, it's happy. That happiness indicated that the fact you're thinking happy thoughts, not just you're singing, but you're walking around with a spring in your step, that means that the joy that you have has touched your very core. The name of this week's Torah portion is B'chukotai. Chotai means that it's engraved, it touches you. The Torah is one with God, and God isn't just the life of our spiritual realm. It's easy to live in two different worlds. Some people go to shul and they're very sincere and they stand before God and they say, God, I'm just here as your servant. I'm just here. I know all my sustenance comes from you. You're the source of everything. And I'm just here as your servant to reveal your light in the world. And then they go into their office and they're sharks and they fight and they're there to win and they want to make the most money they can. And there's a bit of a schism. There's a bit of a separation. There's a bit of the value system they had in the shul and the value system they had in the office are different. So the very first thing to break the dichotomy is to realize that God is our life, which means that every part of our life is changed, is animated by God, not just the spiritual. I'll tell you one story, let you guys go. There was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, his name was Binyamin Kletzker. Not to be confused with John Smith. Binyamin Kletzker. Okay, anyways, Binyamin Kletzker, so he was doing business. Two stories, Binyamin Kletzker, very short. The first story is he was writing a tally sheet of his business. On the bottom of his tally sheet, he wrote sum total. What was the sum total of his business? Ein od milvado. There's nothing besides Hashem. What's the sum total? Ein od milvado. That's the sum total. This same Yamin Kletzker, he was a lumber merchant. He went to do business with another friend of his near a riverbank, and he was a bit of a thinker. So his friend was busy, and while his friend was busy, he went to go meditate. He went to meditate for 3, 4, or 5 hours. His friend, where'd that guy go? And he sees him by the riverbank meditating. He's like, oh my gosh, dude, business is business. What are you doing in the middle of business? Why are you meditating now? So Rabbi Yamin responded something very deep, very profound. He says, if during Shema, I could think about my business. I could think about my business while I'm in the middle of Sink Hashem Echad. I think about my stocks and my bonds and my investments. So then the Rebbe Kletzker said, so if I'm in the middle of my business, I'm also allowed to think about Hashem Echad. That's what Hashem Echad means. Hashem Echad. This by the way, the previous Rebbe said when he said this story, you should know the previous Rebbe said if you heard the story is about you. That's the previous Rebbe wrote thousands of letters and discourses, but about this story, I don't know about anything else, is if you read this story, he says, I want you to know this means you. So this is about all of us. So to answer our question, is it possible to integrate both our spiritual side and our physical side? It starts with this. To make it engraved, to make yourself feel holistic, which that's what our religion is. Religion is holistic. We believe that one God created the heaven and created the earth and created the shul and created the business, created everything. The first step is to feel that the Torah is your life, that this is where your life comes from. And when you have that perspective, that Torah is your life, then you don't see a separation between your business, your home. You know it's all one, coming from one Hashem. And therefore, if it's natural that you want to learn more Torah, you don't feel litmus test. You don't feel when you're finishing davening and you have an appointment somewhere, you don't feel this pressure, this anxiety. I have to finish davening to get there. Why don't you feel that anxiety? Because you know that it all comes from Hashem. And therefore, by learning more Torah and giving more tzedakah and praying more, you're not fighting, you're not losing. It's on the contrary. The source of everything is from Hashem and from the Torah.